Welcome to another Saturday night and taking it to the nub. I'm your host, Boston Jimmie. And tonight, I've been saying it all week. I'm going to have a fun show because we're going to talk about cigars and fishing. And why are we talking fishing? Because my guest, Lou Cross, his brand is Lure Cigars. You're going to learn all about the reason why it's called Lure Cigars, but of course, it has to do with fishing. And we're going to get into that in just a moment. But before we do that, as usual, we're going to give a little shout out to our sponsors. And then when we come back in, we're going to bring Lou right in.
Is brought to you by Casa Cuevas Cigars. In the 19th century, Juan Cuevas, Spanish immigrant from Santander, began what was to be a family business which now spans 4 generations. Like others fortunate enough to live and work in Pinar del Rio province of Cuba, Juan commenced cultivating tobacco, turning it into a successful business. Years later, in the Ciabo Valley of the Dominican Republic, Luis Cuevas Sr., Juan Jr.'s son, carried on the family tradition of handcrafting fine cigars in the family's cigar factory, Tabacalera Las Lavas. Today, Luis Sr. is joined by his son Luis Jr. in the manufacturing and sale of premium long filler cigars. So check out Casa Cuevas Cigars at www.casacuevascigars.com and on their Instagram and Facebook channels.
Catelli Cigars is back. The past few years brought many questions and changes to the cigar industry. In the wake of all uncertainty, Catelli Cigars decided to take a break and try their hand in the retail side of cigars. With 2 shops under their belt, first Riverside Cigar Bar, and now the Catelli Cigar Lounge in Vero Beach, Florida, they are now more educated in the retail and the wholesale sides of the cigar business. During this time, they received many inquiries about their cigars returning to the market. Making the difficult decision to take a break from their brand was eased knowing that when the time was right, Catelli would be back, and now they are. Catelli is excited to bring their first release, the Catelli Box Air, back to market. The Box Air, a rich box-pressed San Andreas Mexican Maduro with a Nicaraguan binder and filler, come in Box Air's 3 original sizes, Robusto, Toro, and Gordo. You can check out Catelli Cigars at catellicigars.com. And also check out their Facebook and Instagram pages.
Hey, let's bring Lou in. Brother Lou, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Jimmy. How are you?
I am absolutely fabulous. It's been a wonderful week. I'm getting ready for Thanksgiving. You get ready for turkey?
Absolutely. All the prepping and all the stuffing and all the other stuff is on deck, and we made a menu out with my in-laws and my family and everybody else getting ready to throw down in a couple of days for sure.
You serve fish also, you know?
We don't at Thanksgiving. We do at Christmas. You do the Feast of the
Christmas.
Seven Fishes. So
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Oh, you know
my
that.
Italian heritage, come out. We'll do the Feast of Seven Fishes, and then that's on Christmas Eve.
Mm-hmm.
My family, a lot of them don't like seafood, but as my kids have gotten older, they've kind of warmed up to the idea. So it's actually, more enjoyable now that they can enjoy it too. But yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we do that. We've been doing I've been doing that my whole life, and my daughter now hosts it up in Jacksonville.
All right.
And she's just like she just reminds me how expensive it is, Dad. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'd be happy to host it down here.
Well,
Let me know what you want me to bring or
not
buy.
only that, but how many years did you do it? I mean,
I
it's like
did it a
finally
long
realize.
time. Yeah,
Right.
we did it for 20 something years
Sure.
before she took it over. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. So Lure Cigars. So just so everybody knows, I was posting out today. So I brought my fishing pole,
All
uh,
right.
and I got my fishing hat on. It's also my climbing hat because this is what I used to climb Mount Fuji last year. So it's
That's
it's my
amazing.
it's my adventure hat.
Yeah, adventure. There you
Going on
go.
an adventure today with you and Lure Cigars. So the question,
Salute.
I guess, is to kick things off, is explain a little history of Lure Cigars. Why Lure? Why fishing and cigars? Let's kind of
Yeah.
go through it, kind of a small soliloquy of that, and then we'll break that down as we go on, and then we'll tell some tall tales also.
Sure. Well, I appreciate, thanks for the opportunity to come out and talk with you tonight. And I appreciate all the support you've given with kind of spreading the word about Lure over the last year. We're a relatively new company. We started officially in January of 2024. We had a soft launch in the fall of last year. And last year, 2023, was the year that my dad passed away. And my dad, my namesake, he was the junior, I'm the third. His dad was the senior. Lou, my dad and I enjoyed cigars for over 30 years together. I started smoking when I was 18, and he smoked cigars before that. And one of the activities that we always did together was fishing, and he would smoke cigars. And so when I got to be where I could, at the time, 18 years of age was the legal threshold where you could go out and get into it. I had gone on a trip with a buddy, a fishing trip with a buddy down to the Florida Keys, and we stopped in, and his dad smoked cigars. And while I was down there, I smoked my first cigar. And I said, well, my dad likes cigars. You guys like cigars. There must be something to this. And I always enjoyed the aroma of cigars, but it wasn't until I actually was down there in the Keys and smoked my first cigar. And when I came back from that trip in 1992, I said, gosh, this is something I want to do. And so I started out, doing mail order. There was no internet and stuff back then. And we brought them back. And when there was an actual new shop that had opened up in 93, Jerry's Cigar Shop here in Tallahassee, I went and bought my first box of cigars, had my Tupperware cooler. And my dad goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm getting into cigars. He said, oh, give me one of those. And the stuff he would smoke, he'd smoke a lot of drugstore cheap, cigars or whatever. But, so we got to start enjoying cigars together. So fast forward 30 years later, my dad and I had had many adventures, many fishing trips. We lived on a little pond. We could go out and catch bass, bluegill, shellcracker, crappie. And every now and then we would take a trip. And whenever we would travel, he would always have a rod and a reel. That was always something it was very portable, and it was something he could always enjoy no matter where we were going. Absolutely.
Have one.
So fast forward, he gets to the point at the end of his life, and he had had a full life, wonderful, happy life. And it was a great example for me. And I said to him, hey, man, let's throw a big party for your 90th birthday. So that was in June 1st last year.
90 years old, God bless him.
90 years old, yes, sir. And he had a great time. All the family and friends came in. We smoked cigars, told tall tales. We told, stories, and everybody else had those things. And shortly thereafter, Dad, he said, I'm just tired. I got to see everybody. I've had a full life. And he just said, I'm done. And it was one of the things that you celebrate it in terms of, you can get sad about it when you stop to think about it. But at the same time, it was such a long and full life. He said, I got to do everything I wanted to do. He got 2 weeks later, he decided he was just tired and just went to sleep one night and didn't wake up the next day.
Oh, wow.
And so after that, I had tried to get a cigar made for my buddy Nimmer Ahmad, who owns Valakari. And he's also in Tallahassee, where I'm located in Florida. And so Nimmer's a great personal friend. And I had gone to him in advance of the 90th birthday party trying to get a cigar made for Dad. And Dad had smoked these little Connecticut figurados, like a short story, kind of double perfecto, little short story. And Nimmer had a set of Connecticut cigars rolled for him, but they didn't arrive in time for the birthday party. So they did happen to show up in the next couple weeks afterwards. And I used those cigars as a way to tell the story at his eulogy. So at his funeral and at his wake, I gave the cigars away to people that were there and encouraged them to talk, tell stories and share them with friends, share them with family. Well, I didn't know where that was going to go. So as it turns out, in the weeks that followed Dad's passing, I got email and text messages and phone calls, and I saw people that I hadn't seen in years talk to me and said, I smoked that cigar. It was such a great cigar. I remember this with your dad, or I smoked it with my son, or I smoked it with my daughter, or my wife and I sat out back and we just reminisced because in the middle of summer you can actually smoke outside and appreciate it's taking time and slowing down. So as I got those stories, it encouraged me to say, look, one thing my dad always said towards the end was, I wish I could go hunting one more time. I wish I could go fishing one more time. I wish, I wish, I wish. And I didn't want to get to the end of my life. I'm 50 years old. And so getting that 50-year mark, I said, look, I don't want to get to the end of my, tour and not have done something. And who hasn't thought about having their own cigar line if you're a cigar enthusiast? Or who hasn't thought about, I'm going to have a cigar lounge, I'm going to go into retail business. Well, I'm not in a position where I could do the retail business and dedicate that. So I said, you know what? Let me see if I could do a cigar. I went back to Nimmer and I said, look, the Connecticut's aren't my deal. I'm not a big Connecticut smoker. I appreciate them, for a morning smoke, but if I'm going to put my name on something, I want to have a really special cigar. He said, do you want to do this just for you? You want to do this for a business? I said, well, I've never thought about it. So we did an experiment last Black Friday, a year ago this week. This is kind of an anniversary for me too.
Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. We launched with Oxford Cigar Company, and we launched with Jerry's Cigar Shop in Tallahassee here, which was Dad and I's home lounge. So we had a few thousand cigars. You can't go to a factory and say, roll me a couple hundred cigars. That's not how it works.
That's it.
And I said, let's do this. And so we were fortunate enough when we were trying to blend the cigar of coming up with an idea. And I was smoking with a couple other buddies, my buddy James and Tim. We were sitting back and they were like, how'd you get into the cigar business in the first place? How'd you get into this, the idea of smoking cigars? And I said, it was fishing. And I told my stories and he said, you ought to do something that's got that kind of hook, that whole catch, all these kind of metaphors that were, great marketing ideas. But at the same time, an activity that was very conducive, like golfing, playing golf or whatever. And fishing and cigars seem to go together, whether it's while you're doing it or whether you're doing it afterwards and you're sitting around the campfire, you're sitting on the lodge, talking and telling tall tales. So that's what really brings the cigar, forward for me is fishing. And so Lure Cigars was born out of that idea.
Okay. Now, and I'm gonna pull up your website in just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
You talked in there about your first cigar like back in '92 or somewhere. What was your first cigar? Do you remember?
I do. So it was an unbanded cigar. There was a cigar shop in Miami that we stopped at on the way down. We drove down, we had to pick up a boat, and I think it was in Melbourne area. We picked up the boat. And so as we're trailering down, I'm sitting in the back of my buddy's dad's truck, and we pick up the boat, and he says, I got to make one more stop before we get to the Keys. Or whatever, we're going to get out and, stretch our legs a little bit. And it was a cigar shop. And I think it was called Cuban Cigar Factory or something. It was in a strip mall. And I walked in to this cigar shop, never been in a cigar shop in my life.
Oh,
And there was this beautiful Latina woman that was in a black dress, high heels, and she was guided us into the humidor. And I'm in t-shirt and jeans and cutoffs, probably at flip-flops. And she treated us like we were royalty. And she knew everything there was to know about these cigars. This one's Piloto or Loto, da, 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 da. This one's from Honduras. This one's Nicaraguan. This one's Dominican Republic. And I didn't record anything she was saying. I was mesmerized by the whole thing. The smell and the aromas of the cedar and the tobacco was just, I said, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal.
intoxicating.
So It was intoxicating. Very good word. So I got in there and I ended up buying a handful of cigars, and she just, they were all unbanded. There was a couple of Fuentes, there was some Partagas, and some other things in the humidor. But I said, let's focus on the ones that you had or whatever it was. So Ziploc bag. There was no Bovida back then. Ziploc bag. She says, put these in a Tupperware container or whatever with a little sponge and some distilled water. I said, well, we're not going to be traveling that long. I'll just leave them in the Ziploc bag. So we get it back in the car. We drive to the Keys. Well, that night, after we got the boat in the water and back in the canal behind the little house, my buddy's grandparents, we were there to do some renovations and do some demolition because they had had a storm go through and they were renovating this little, little house. Wonderful time. We're sitting on the boat in the canal. It's 70 degrees, light, gentle breeze. And there's a security light that was out there, just giving enough cast of light, but we could still see the stars and still see the moon and everything. And we're sitting there, and we were kicking back a few beers because we had worked hard to unload everything and started doing some demolition. And I said, let's go get those cigars. And they're like, yeah, this is the thing to do. So I'm 18, go up there, get the cigars, share them with my buddies that are down there. And when I lit that cigar, didn't I had this little plastic cutter. I said, I am going to do this again. And we smoked, I think, 4 cigars that night until wee hours of the morning.
Wow. Yeah.
And I said, this is incredible. I said, just I don't know if life gets any better than this moment. And so, long story short, when we came back through town, we went back to the cigar place. I grabbed a few more that were there, got back to Tallahassee, and immediately started looking around. And there was the Jerry's had just opened up shortly thereafter, and had gone to there was another place that was in the mall. Went and bought a box of Arturo Fuente Numero Unos,
Okay.
which okay, this was a
Yeah.
this was a cigar before they had the Hemingways, before they had the whole blow up. This was well before the first boom that they talk about. The
That was at
whole
the same
box,
time as the curly heads that they had.
yeah, curly. So they had curly heads, but the Numero Unos was a
Mhm.
Lonsdale,
Yeah.
the Numero Uno, and it was "We will not rush the hands of time." And the guy who was the proprietor of the cigar shop was like, "These are some of my best smokes," and they really were amazing. And I'll tell you, the whole box cost me $42 for
Oh yeah.
25 cigars. I was like, this is affordable. This is wonderful. So I took them back, and then my brother and I, we would sit on the little pier, the little boat dock that we have at my parents' lake, and we would sit there and just smoke cigars and watch the stars and shoot the breeze. It was phenomenal. And so that was the second round of cigars. But the first cigar was an unbanded. Who knows what it was, but it was one of the best tasting. Even chasing that dragon, so to speak, for all the way through. And every now and then you'll have a smoke that reminds you of that moment,
Yes.
and it brings it back, to those memories, that olfactory kind of connection in the brain. You say, "Oh, I remember when I smoked something very similar to this," and
That's
it helps to
correct.
connect the dots.
You get that aroma, the taste.
Hmm.
It brings you back. There's even moments where I get certain aromas that bring me back to like when I was a kid, not even smoking cigars. Just something about it brings
Sure.
me back to my neighborhood or brings me back to my grandfather's
Oh
house.
yeah,
He smoked
absolutely.
cigars, chewed tobacco, and his whole
Yep.
house smelled like, chewed tobacco. But and having that and always having that moment and moments as you go on of special times, right?
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
I was just recently for my birthday. I went up to Toronto to visit a friend of mine I've known for years, and to celebrate my 65th. They said I'm just going to do a low key one this year and just go hang out with you. And we just sat down, smoked cigars, played music. He had a bass guitar. I mess with a bass. I'm not good at it, but he just showed me what to do. And he's playing the guitar, and we're smoking cigars and playing music and
Oh, that's
drinking
great.
whiskey. And I'm just like, I'll never forget that week last week because it was such a spectacular week for me to just chill down and not care. I mean, I don't have much
Hmm.
care in the world anymore anyway, but that was just the pinnacle of my retirement, turning 65, the whole thing, and it'll
Yeah,
always be up in here.
that's wonderful. Outstanding.
But
Well, that's what it's all about.
my first cigar was probably a Gosha Vega.
Oh yeah,
All right,
sure.
my
Hmm.
father, my first wife, he always smoked Garcia Vegas. So that's what I would smoke, and through
Absolutely.
college, and fraternity
Yep.
that we did. And then
Yeah.
I discovered cigars. Moved to Boston, discovered some things, and then when I came back to New York, I started to really experience it. And then in Florida, my mind exploded when I moved here back in '87, and there was just like there were shops, like you
Yeah.
said, lots of them,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I got hooked for years. I was hooked on Hoya de Monterey's,
Oh
the
yeah.
the Excaliburs.
Excalibur number three. I love the Excalibur number three. One of
Just
my favorite cigars. Yep.
oh my God, that I
Yep.
would buy boxes of
Yep.
those, and then
Yep.
Hurricane Mitch hit, and the whole Honduran line just went to crap for
Yeah.
years. It was hard to just, I mean, because all their crops they had
Mm-hmm.
crops, all this, they had all these issues. And eventually you ended up with, Nicaragua, Dominican started coming
Sure.
in.
Sure.
Yeah, you never forget somebody. It's like you never forget your first girl. You never forget
No.
your cigar, first
Absolutely.
whiskey,
Absolutely.
your first
Absolutely.
bad drunkenness.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can, and maybe to the point where you don't drink that particular spirit anymore because of
Yeah,
Sure.
Frangelica was
Yeah.
mine.
Woo. Yeah. Nope. Yeah. I'll
Mm.
keep that off the radar.
I have a
It
hard
was.
time smelling hazelnut.
Oh,
I
I
just,
can. Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well,
so
so
let-
how
yeah.
tell me Boston. So you're in Melbourne now.
Mhm.
Did you move there before retirement? Did you retire to Melbourne in terms of
So
you
I
Boston?
I graduated college in '81, went to college in Brooklyn. I lived on Long Island. I grew up on Long Island, right on the Queens,
Hmm.
New York,
Yeah.
Nassau County border.
Yeah.
And I went to college in Brooklyn, went to Pratt Institute for engineering,
Yeah.
graduated in '81. So from '77 to '81. And my first job was with Raytheon up in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So I
Sure.
moved to Massachusetts. I was up there for 3 years. Uh,
Wow.
and then my wife at the time, she was pregnant with my daughter, first child, and she wanted to go back home. And I was like, I kind of got a good thing going here. And well, okay, so I ended up getting a job with the Grumman Corporation back on Long Island.
Hmm.
And they were just starting to bid and propose on a job, this big Air Force job, this big airborne ground surveillance platform. And they were looking for volunteers to join the team because they were going to move the operation to Florida.
Oh yeah.
If they won it, we're coming down to Melbourne, Florida. They're going to set up operations here.
Sure.
And they did in 1987. We packed our bags and off to Florida we went. I've been here ever since,
Outstanding.
less some other places.
Sure.
When I did the whole cigar thing 12 years ago, I kind of went with the moniker of Boston Jimmie because every time I would talk to people when I moved here, they didn't always peg the New York accent because when I
Sure.
moved to Boston, those 3 years, I lost my R's. I mean,
Did
they
you
just
really? Yeah.
evaporated from my vocabulary. So
Sure.
people were pegging me as Boston Jimmie. Not to mention, I came home from Boston. I went up with a Yankee hat on. I came home with a Red Sox hat on.
Oh yeah.
They made fun
Yeah.
of me. So I said, you know
Hmm.
what? I'm going to use that because it's part of who I am. And
Sure.
it's been like that. There are people in this industry who don't even know my last name. They have no idea. They don't know I have an Italian last name. They don't know none of that,
Yeah.
right? So it's cool to have done that. My Boston friends sometimes say you stole Boston. That you shouldn't have
Yeah.
done.
That's great.
And I'm like,
That's
screw
great.
you. Okay, I'm having fun with it. So that's
Sure.
where the Boston. So yeah, so I was here since '87 and been and actually in the early '90s, about when you were starting,
Hmm.
I had a friend of mine. We were actually beginning to, so we're telling tall tales now.
Oh yeah.
We contemplated creating a cigar magazine locally here in Central Florida called Central Florida Cigar Smoke Magazine.
Yeah.
And we had gotten a bunch of articles we wrote. We put together a nice sample package. We went to a professional printer, printed up a sample advertising portfolio,
Wow.
glossy
Nice.
stuff like a 16-page
Yeah.
little mini magazine,
Sure.
full format, but 16 pages, to
Yeah.
kind of give an idea of what we had. We had everything rocking and rolling. We were ready to do this. And the one thing as two engineers that we miscalculated in this, we are not salesmen. And nobody knew who we were. And it was a free magazine. It was
Yeah.
distributed back then. You could smoke anywhere. You could smoke at the
Uh-huh.
bar at Chili's back then, right? Which
Yeah.
I did
Yeah.
many times. It would just be planted everywhere. Nobody wanted to advertise, so the whole project crashed.
Oh,
Right?
goodness.
Kind of launched a printing brokerage on the side that we did because we got to know the printer and we were selling business cards and stuff like
Sure. Yeah.
that.
Stationary,
Making
all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
you
we
bet.
made a couple of shekels on the side. But then my new wife, I always talked about this with her. She goes, "Why don't you just?" She was developing websites. She goes, "Why don't you just make a website?" And we did. And 12 years ago, here we are today,
Wow.
still doing what we're doing.
That's been fantastic.
It was, it's been a hell of a journey. One that I would, recommend to anybody if you have the desire, the willpower, the perseverance to push through this day in and day out,
Yeah.
constantly putting content out. Because
Yeah.
that's important.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I've been very appreciative of you picking up our press releases and sharing them out there with the other followers that you have and getting it out there and everything. We're a new brand. The launch officially, I mentioned, was in January of this year. We went ahead to see, test market, could we sell some cigars? And the first 5,000 cigars that we had ready to go was the Corojo line. And the Corojo line came out in November, and then that sold out before the first of the year. And so we turned around and I said, let's keep going. This is some proof of concept. So we kind of formalized everything, locked everything in
I'm going to
January.
throw
And
your website up as we talk
yeah,
about this
sure.
so everybody
I
can see
appreciate that.
where we're at.
LureCigars.com.
Yep,
Appreciate
I
that.
got it all queued up. There we go. Okay.
So now the first three cigars we had are the middle Corojo in the middle on the left there. Yeah. And so we had the Little Tony, the Big Lou, and the BLT. And the cigars all have some type of naming convention similar to like the old 60s and 70s lures. I was trying to come up with a catchy name for each of the different vitolas within each of the blends. And it made sense to kind of make it like so there was the kind of rhyming, sing-songy alliteration between the Super Duper was one of my dad's favorite lures that he goes, I can put the Super Duper in any body of water and catch a fish. So the Big Lou was named after my dad. It was the 6x52 Toro. The BLT is the Big Lou Torpedo, but my dad loved the BLT sandwich. So the BLT, the Big Lou Torpedo. And then the Little Tony was the Robusto 5x50. My son, he is my oldest child, and I've got two daughters, and he's actually 6'5", so it was kind of a joke because the smallest cigar was actually, my tallest child. And so, and then shortly thereafter, we created the Lunker, which is the 6x60. It was the larger. We had a lot of requests for the larger format. I'm not a
Funny how
big,
people like that.
they love that size. They just
They
really
do.
love that size. And so we did the Lunker, and then I wanted a longer version of the Little Tony, so I had the Churchill we call the Sir Gar, like Garfish and Sir
I
Winston
like
Churchill.
that.
So the
Yeah.
Sir Gar is the Churchill in the Corojo. And I really love that cigar. And I've got some friends that smoke that cigar. And when they do, they say it drops into low gear in the last third because you can take it and it's 2 hours to smoke that. So there's a little bit of a blend note and a little bit of sizes you can see on the website. I would invite anybody to go and see that. Well, while we were
So
launching
these
with the
are
Corojo,
all, so the first ones, just not to interrupt, but the
yep,
first
no,
one
you're good.
have the cigars page up here. So the first ones you
Yep,
brought up, these are all the same blend, just a different vitola in each one.
correct. Yeah,
Okay.
so the torpedo actually has a little bit more Lajero in it, and that was kind of the experiment to see if we could get a little bit more strength out of it. And there's people that
Mhm.
smoke that torpedo and swear by it. It has a little slightly different flavor profile just because of the Lajero. But at the end of the day, that's all the same blend. It's all the same kind of recipe, just in different sizes.
Okay. And
And
then
then
I'm
the
going to
the
move down
Habano. So
here, get into
you
Habano.
you know, like anybody else, everybody asks you what's next. So as soon as you come out with something, as I was reaching out to retailers and my number of retailers was slowly increasing and people were smoking the cigars and it picked up on social media, everybody said, "What's next?" Well, I'm a big Corojo fan. I smoke a lot of Aganorsa, I smoke a lot of Tatuaje. My father, the Corojo, I'm a big fan of Corojo leaf, so that was a good start for us. But I also like a good Habano, and we were working on a Habano, and so when my daughters found out that I named my son's cigar the Little Tony, they're like, "When are we going to get our cigar?" So the first two of the Habano, we had the Tally Alley because my daughter's name is Allison and we're from Tallahassee. And so Tally is the nickname for Tallahassee, and Allie is her nickname. So the Tally Alley was the Toro, and she's 6'3", so she's taller. I gave her the bigger one. And then my middle child, Nicole, her nickname is Coley. And so I said the Holy Coley, and that is a 5x50 Robusto. And she's 5'8", 5'7", something like that. So it was fun to have it. And they thought it was really great to have a cigar named after them. I never thought they would be interested, but they were really, really part of it. And we launched that in February. And so that went really, really well. But everybody was asking for a stronger smoke. And so in order to make that, what I did was I asked the factory, I said, what can we do to bring more strength, but yet keep the balance of flavor? So they sent up a box press Toro. And what they did was they took out some of the filler tobaccos and they left all of the Lajero. And it's Amatepe Lajero and it's an Amatepe binder. And they changed up the wrapper leaf a little bit. So it's a Habano 2000 wrapper. And that cigar, because it's box press and there's less fill, the combustibility is there to leave the Lajero in so it doesn't smolder. And the strength is just next level. So it's a full click up in terms of the strength. While I was smoking that cigar on the porch, and it was the samples, I said, "This cigar is awesome." I'm talking to Nimmer, and I said, "Nimmer, this cigar is awesome." Well, my wife happened to overhear me, and she said, "Look, if that cigar is awesome, I want it named after me." And I'm like, "Really?" And I'm like, "I'm going to call this the Mean Gene." Her name is Jeannie, and so Nimmer was like, "I'm not calling it the Mean Gene." I said, "She's all for it." He's like, "Put her on the phone." So put her on the phone. She said, I'm totally sanctioning this. I think that's great. So the Mean Gene was launched in July of this past year, and it has really captured a lot of people that have loved the Habanos. They've like loved the progression to get to the next step, and that's where the Habano line is for the three sizes. We also have a fourth size in the Habano, which is that same Churchill. I don't have it on the website because it's an LE. We've only got a few left out there in the wild, and it was called the Long Don. So one of my good friends, Nigel Alston, when I met through Luxury Cigar Club, and several other guys that we hang out, and men and women both, and we hang out on a daily basis, and we're herfing. He loved the Holy Coley, and he loved the Holy Coley so much. I said, "Well, if you love that cigar and you want it to last longer, I'm going to create a Churchill version like I did for the cigar." So I call that the Long Don because his nickname on the cigar virtual space is the Don. So the Long Don is out there as well, and that's a 7x48 Churchill in the Habano. So those
I just say
those
that people are going to play a name game on that one, I'm sure.
hmm
For
yeah,
those
they
of us
do.
that grew up years ago, know the other part of the long dot, what silver. Yeah, yeah.
That's right. Exactly. That's exactly right. And so, it's a little, you have fun with it. I mean, and we want to have fun. This is a brand that is very approachable. Um, One of the things that my dad always did, he sold insurance for Prudential for over 30 years and then retired and had 30 years of retirement, bless his heart. And he was one of the guys that was kind of the last guard, and he would go out and collect the premiums on a weekly basis and put it, the few dollars in an envelope. And that's what he started out. And as time went on and everything went computerized and everything else, he kind of got long for that business and was happy to retire when he did. He was a very people-oriented person. And his example was always make something, if you're going to do something, make it accessible for the common person that's out there. And don't he never was a luxury guy. He never had any, expensive things, but we always had things that you took care of. Take care of what you have, take care of the people that have it, make it accessible. So the brand, as it's come about, we want to make sure that the cigars are there's value there. And we put the money in the tobacco, not in all the packaging and all the other stuff and everything else. And so we've come out with, in terms of, I don't know if you're familiar with our packaging, but
Well, before
We
you get
keep,
there, let's go.
okay.
Let's go. What we have one last one. I want to go back and share.
Yeah.
So the last one is
Oh,
you have the
yeah.
Connecticut broadleaf, also the last cast.
So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So I did the cigar, the Big Lou, and people kind of got the story and they got the background on my dad's name and my name and everything else. But it was when I was sitting there and I said, I'm coming up on the anniversary of my dad's first year of his passing. And June is a very special month for me and my dad because it's Father's Day, his birthday, and it's the month that he passed. And so what we did was we took it and I said, I've got to have a cigar that I can put out that is in honor of him. And the concept of the last cast, my buddy Rob that smokes with us over at Jerry's, he's sitting there, he's a fisherman, and he says, you know what, you ought to have a cigar called the last cast. And I said, and it just rung my bell in a sense because as a fisherman, you go and you whatever, however long you're going to be out there fishing, you always look at yourself or you look at the person you're fishing with or the group of people you're fishing with, and you look at each other and you say, last cast, last cast. And you throw that cast out there and you may reel it in a little slower. You may put a little more action on the lure. You're going to try to get that fish to entice that fish to bite. And you take a little bit more time. You're paying attention because you know that's the last cast you're going to make during that fishing episode. Before you draw the anchor and you pull in, or you head back to the shore, or you pack up your tackle box. The last cast was the name for the cigar that I wish I could sit there and smoke, and I want people to stop, slow down, really appreciate it. So the last cast, a very complex Connecticut broadleaf over Nicka binder and filler, and that cigar was released as an LE and we will do that annually. The last cast will be annual release in June. It will always be available, and we only rolled 1,600 of them for this time because I didn't know it was a new company, and I didn't know, and they sold out immediately. I've only got a couple of last casts left. I just, people really love that cigar, and so next year we'll do a little bit broader production. But it will always be a special cigar and a special blend that we'll maintain and we'll go going forward. So that was kind of our complete portfolio of our core line stuff.
Okay, so let me put a halt there for a second. I'm gonna
Hmm.
do my last sponsor break.
Yeah.
And then when we come back, I do want to dig in a little bit into the blend because I noticed something common and I want to talk about that. And
Hmm.
then tell a little more, and then we'll share some interest. I'll give you one of my fishing stories. You can give me one of
Yeah.
yours.
All right. Sounds great.
That's the best one that you have. So with that, we'll just do this.
From the valleys in Honduras to the heart of Louisiana, where excellence thrives, two legacies come together to harvest a new tradition. For many years, Honduras has been a symbol of quality and hard work, inspiring many achievements. At Bocock Brothers, we craft cigars that embody passion and precision, rooted in a commitment to excellence. From the tobacco leaves in the fields to crafting the cigars in the factory, we celebrate our partnership with LSU. Introducing the LSU Commemorative Cigar Collection. Each cigar a tribute to the spirit of excellence that defines both. Join us in this celebration, a symbol of pride, a mark of distinction, a taste of history, crafting excellence together.
And today's show is brought to you by Platinum Nova Cigars. Platinum Nova is a family-owned and operated premium cigar company. Only the highest vintage tobacco and the most skilled hand workmanship go into the making of each Platinum Nova cigar. This results in a timeless blend of art and craftsmanship. The Nova brand and the family's work are a tribute and an honor to their grandfather to always remember him and his infinite passion for the finest cigars. Their love for cigars started with their grandfather, a dedicated master blender and entrepreneur in the cigar industry. So the next time you're looking for that exquisite cigar experience, pick up a Platinum Nova. You could check them out at Platinum Nova Cigars, www.novacigar.com, and on their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels. And today's show is brought to you by All Saints Cigars, a company founded in 2019 and headed up by industry veteran Mickey Pegg and his two friends, Martin Corboy, a successful restaurateur, and Frank Leo, an Air Force Academy graduate military veteran. As Mickey explains it, they were all sitting down, talking and smoking cigars, and finally they decided that they would do this thing together. It was time. Mickey said, I decided if I'm going to work hard at it, it should be something I love. Besides, a tough day with a cigar is better than a great day doing anything else. Soon after, they began the process of launching All Saints Cigars, jokingly referring to themselves as the Holy Trinity, St. Michael, St. Martin, and St. Francis. They chose for their logo the cross of St. James, the patron saint of Nicaragua, the country where their cigars will be produced. You can check out All Saints Cigars at www.allsaintscigars.com.
Okay. I want to thank my sponsors. Without them, the show's always a little harder to do.
Yeah.
If you noticed in the Nova one, you may not have picked it up, but in the very beginning of that segment, there was a chair and there were two cigars on the chair. One of those cigars is what's called a Boston Jimmie. Back in 5 years ago, my 60th birthday, I actually threw myself a party at my local lounge. Okay, invited everybody with an open bar, food, band. I did the whole thing, paid for it all myself, and everybody had a great time. But one of the things I wanted to do was give everybody something to go home with, and that was going to be my signature cigar.
Yeah.
A small company down in Texas, Providencia Cigars, who they're no longer doing the work anymore, but they had a small factory in Honduras, and they were able to make me, unlike having 1,000, they could do like 100 run, 150 runs. So
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
and I came up with the blend on my own, and I kind of knew what it would be. Was San Andreas wrapper with a Sumatra binder and an Ometepe and Jalapa fillers. Ometepe, and that's why I wanted to bring that up. Ometepe is one of my favorite leaf in cigars. It imparts such beautiful notes from that volcanic, earthy soil. It is just so delicious. So I see in your blends, you use Ometepe.
Yes.
Now, did you know of Ometepe before you did this?
I knew of it only because Nimmer, who I've mentioned, he's been kind of my mentor in terms of getting and producing cigars. And it was a signature tobacco that he had used in all of Valacari's lines. And so I had been privy to being able to smoke a lot of test blends with him and smoke a lot of his cigars and have enjoyed his cigars going forward. And I knew that his cigars were different because Amatepe was a tobacco that wasn't very commonly used or it wasn't advertised as much. And it's much more popular now in this last year. You'll see these cigars like Plasencia and all these other, the HVCs using it, and they're all promoting it as this tobacco that is, special. And it is a special tobacco because it has a unique flavor. And so I was fortunate enough to work with somebody that had already been very well established with that. And when we got the cigars for Lure, I said, I want to maintain that kind of signature flavor. I want those flavors to come forward. And I like a more bold smoke. I mentioned that I'm not a big Connecticut smoker, and I've smoked 3 or 4 cigars a day. Well, in smoking those 3 or 4 cigars a day, I want to have something that is going to keep my palate interested. And Amatepe is one of those tobaccos. And I like, tobaccos from many different regions and many different places and a lot of different companies. But for me to put my name on something, I wanted to have something that was something I enjoyed smoking. And that Amatepe tobacco does carry that forward. And that Mean Gene, I'll make sure that you get a chance to smoke that because that is 50% of that cigar is Amatepe.
I saw that. That's
and it is when people smoke it, they go, "This is different, and this is really good." And I know that Amatepe is part of that contribution to that experience for sure.
right
My career in the past, I was a cartographer and a map maker for a number of years coming out of college. And I immediately went to a map of Nicaragua to kind of see where's this region. And you see this odd dumbbell shaped island where you've got this very concentrated high slope, green valley lush place where they're growing this volcanic uh, influenced tobacco because the volcanic rich soils, and you can kind of appreciate that the terroir of the tobacco, if you will. And that got me excited, to be able to say this is something that I can actually talk to people about and say, do you notice that depth of flavor that's in there? That's the Amatepe.
Now, have you had an opportunity to visit Ometepe?
I have not. So I have not traveled down to Nicaragua. That's on the bucket list in terms of maybe next year, 2025. I mean, I'm in a position where I would love to go down there. But the way I have picked the blends, I am not involved in the hands-on. We've had the little fumas, little cheroots that they send up with the different tobaccos and try them together and try different things. But I'm no blender. I'm a cigar enthusiast. Like I
Correct.
said, I'm a cigar smoker first. And I have left it up to the factory and the talented people that are at the factory.
Correct.
And the people that are at the factory, they know what they're doing. And you can say, I want a little bit more pepper. I want a little bit more spice. I want a little bit more, creamy smoke. I want a little bit more combustion. Let the experts do this. And so
And
I
that,
have, yeah,
that's the same thing I did. And unlike you, I had a very short window to do what I because I pulled this trigger late, and I told him, I said, here's the blend I want. And I said, here's the notes I think I'm going to get out of this blend. You guys go do it, and don't send me any samples because I ain't got no time to do the back and forth
do
stuff.
it.
So I'm
Right,
leaving it
right.
in your hands to do it.
Hmm.
And they nailed it. And people were like going, this is an amazing cigar. And I can't even get it anymore. Right. And I'm just like,
Oh, wow.
I got to recreate. I would love to recreate this thing again.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
is it was such a spectacular cigar, but you're right. You leave it to the hands of the people. You tell
Yeah.
them what you think, you tell them what you want, and they deliver. If they're good, they deliver.
Oh, and celebrate the artist. I mean, I like to cook, but I'm no chef. And you go to somebody who's classically trained or has been doing it their whole life, they're gonna make whatever that dish is. It's gonna be better than what you could do. And I love the challenge, but at the same time, I love to go out and respect the artist. Whether I like to paint, I like to draw, but I'm not in a practice of it. I can appreciate other people's art. I can appreciate other people's music. I'm not a musician, and it's like I don't want to start learning how to play the guitar and try to mimic something. I'm going to go ahead and just appreciate. I'm a great audience member when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
So,
You play
and
air
so,
guitar, right?
yeah, sure, absolutely. And I'll sing a few bars, but I'm not even able to maintain all the lyrics in my head. I have to read it and make sure I was, not skipping a word or two. But,
Yeah.
that everybody has their talents. And that's another thing my dad and my grandfather always said. You don't cut your own hair and you don't do your own dental work. You can buy the tools, but, you go to somebody that knows what they're doing and celebrate the person that's how they earn a living, and that's what God gave them, that talent, and that gave them that that ability. So celebrate that, and so that's always kind of my approach to it as well, for sure.
All right. So let's tell a couple of tales.
All right,
I'll start with mine and see if you ever had one like this or you got something even better. I'm sure you have much better tales. I'm not a fisherman. I do like to go out once in a while, and it's a rare case that I get invited out onto a boat to go fishing. So I had a friend of mine down in Jupiter. He was telling me because I'm gonna go fishing. He has a friend who's got a boat. So I said, okay, I'll go fishing. So I get down there. We're on a 4 hour fishing excursion, right? So we're going
yep,
out right where the shelf is. You're dropping 100 feet. We're going for snapper, right?
sure.
It was a terrible day with snapper. I mean, nobody's pulling anything out of the water, right? I think we got like two snapper in 4 hours. But
You're,
I
yeah,
dropped the line very beginning and I get a bite, right? And I'm like, and it's hooked. And I'm like, oh, and it's ringing the reel and bending the pole. And I'm like, holy crap, I don't know what I got. And I'm like this for like almost an hour. I'm just kind of like letting it out, bringing it in, letting it out, bringing it in. And it's just going, just, holy crap, right? Finally, after like an hour plus, the I get this fish starts to come up where you can see it, and the mate looks over the side of the boat and goes, Yeah, that's like a 200-pound bull shark.
Oh,
Nip. And I'm like,
it's over.
I wasted an hour and a half.
Oh,
But the worst part of it, that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was the following week, my shoulder froze up, okay? And I ended up having to go in for rotator cuff surgery, okay? That cost me $10,000.
oh my
And so
gosh.
that was my fishing story of catching nothing and
Yes.
paying for what would have been a $400 trip was like $10,000, like in pain and agony for months.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my gosh. That's the kind of thing when you go out deep sea fishing, you don't know what's down there below the surface and you don't know what's happening. And so somebody asked me in a recent time we were sitting there herfing and they said, well, how come you kind of focus on most of your cigar names and things that you're doing in is freshwater fishing? I said, well, that's because of the kind of fishing I did.
Mm,
And being in Florida, there's a lot of people who like to go out and they fish in the Gulf and they fish in the Atlantic. Uh, the Gulf is a little bit less, more forgiving. It's a little less deep, so you end up with a little different presentation. You got the continental shelf over there. You're going to get all these huge, huge, huge fish. I've got a similar story where I went out in fact, it was with the same buddy that told me we were going to go down to the Florida Keys and catch fish or whatever it is, dolphin and everything else. Never caught anything. The amount of energy and effort to go down to, I love saltwater seafood. I love, grouper and snapper and, redfish and other things that are out there. But I've learned that short of, if you want to just waste away a day and smoke cigars out in the sun, which is just fine to do, if you're going out there to like fish for food, it's a lot easier to fish freshwater and catch something to eat than
mm,
it is to go out in the saltwater. Even if somebody's got some great GPS numbers nowadays, or it was Loran back in the day, we went out and it was 4 hours to get to deep water in the Gulf because it's so shallow. And we finally get out there and we drop a line in the water. And when we fish, it's a very passive thing. You drop the line in, you throw a few casts, you keep fishing for a while. Maybe you'll move a little bit, you'll troll over here, troll over there. Well, in deep sea fishing, you got to go out, and if you don't get bites right away, you move to the next set of numbers, whatever the next structure is. I spent the whole day anchoring and unanchoring and anchoring and unanchoring up there at the front of the boat. And every time we would drop a line in the water, we would, nothing would happen. And so I said, this is for the birds. I said, this is terrible. I said, let's catch something, anything. We got one red snapper that was
wow.
about 20 inches long. We were out there for 8 hours and we came in and I agreed to pay for half the gas, and do this. I had told everybody in my family that I'm bringing home dinner. So I had gotten out there at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was 12 hours by the time you get to and from, 8 hours of fishing. No, we had one fish to show for it. I had to stop by the seafood market where they had caught all the fish that morning and the fillets were all done. And I gave them the one fish I had. I said, can you do something with this? They said, yeah, we'll cut your fillets out for you. So I bought 2 pounds of shrimp. I bought a couple more snapper. I bought a couple fillets of grouper. And I come back with my cooler and some seafood dip that they've got down there. Uh, I get back into town. They're like, did you catch any? I said, yeah. And they're like, wow, you must have really killed it. I said, yeah, at the seafood market. So I was like, I could have gone and just driven down there in 45 minutes south of town, hit the seafood market, and then 45 minutes back. But you know what? It was a lot of fun. It's one of those things I said, I'm going to go back over here and catch a bass or a crappie or whatever. I don't prefer to eat those freshwater fish as much, but it's fun to catch. I'm a catch and release guy, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So do for fun.
That I have my older brother, God rest his soul. He had a friend of his. He lived in Maryland. He's a big fishing guy. He's got his own boat and everything, big boat.
Yeah,
And he would go out with him all the time. And he told me one day that this guy's the type of fisherman he is incredible getting fish because he takes the boat out and he just starts trolling lightly. And he goes like this. He just starts smelling the air. He smells the
really.
air. Because he says what happens is you've got the fish, there are feeder fish, there are schools of fish, there are other bigger fish that are eating the smaller fish. And
Sure.
that chum comes to the top of, and
Yeah.
then he looks over the side of the boat, looks at the front of the boat. He starts to see an oil slick. All right. And then you see the birds go, and he
Yeah.
goes, drop the anchor, drop the lines, pulling
And you
fish
tear them
up
up.
one after the other. He says, they just,
Wow.
and he goes, this guy is unbelievable picking out where to fish. He doesn't use a fish finder at all. He uses his
Wow.
nose, his
Yeah.
eyes, sees what's going on, and he knows
Yeah.
where the fish are.
Well, I
That's
wish I
big.
had that. That's a fisherman. I mean, I'm going to tell you, there's people that have talents, like you said before, and it's like that right there. I wish I was fishing with that fella, because I'm going to tell you that would make the experience a whole lot better. And
How
I can
many
tell you,
fish can you identify?
oh, I don't know, my fair share of, especially freshwater fish, I'm pretty good at, but the ocean fish, what's a jack, what's a snapper, what's a drum, macro categories, but in terms of going out there and saying that's a particular this or sheep's head of this, and I don't know,
My,
you know.
my my son, he went to the University of Miami. He studied marine science and
Oh,
biology
wow.
undergrad, and
Hmm.
out of the marine science course, they had a book. It reminded me of like when friends of mine at Pratt were in art, they were artists, and they had the history of art book, which was about this
Oh,
thick.
yeah. Oh,
Every
yeah.
art, and
Yeah.
they had to know every single art, who it is, who did it, what strokes.
Hmm.
He had to know he would get drilled on every single fish. I mean, this is a huge book. And
Oh,
they would
yeah.
go through slides and they would have to identify, write down on the paper when the slides would come up, this is this fish, this is this fish, this is this fish.
Wow.
And he knew every fish on the planet or something. He kind of had it in his head. What
Sure.
like the different species, the different subspecies.
Well,
And he's a scuba
that's
guy. He
phenomenal.
doesn't
Sure.
fish, but he's scuba
Okay.
guy.
Yeah, but you appreciate it from, look at them and stuff. I mean, I did scuba diving. I took a class in college and I was a swimmer. And so I said, this is a natural kind of hobby that I think I'm going to get into until I realized limited air supply and the things that were in the water are bigger than me and they're designed to swim through the water. And I went down to Pennycamp State Park. And so I had got my
Mhm.
first check dive and everything else. I got my first, my PADI card and I went and rented the tanks and I go off the jetty and I'm out there and I'm looking at seahorses and I'm looking at all this pretty stuff. And I turn around and there's a school of barracuda
Oh
that
God.
were twice my size and they had teeth that were like you could just tell and they were there in an instant and it was silent. And I had this big fancy Casio dive watch that was on that was silver and shiny. And I'm like, this is the last thing I want is for some barracuda to think I'm, having my arm is ready for the taking. So I cover my watch and I was like, I got to get out of here. And I was like almost swimming as fast as I could. And I turned around to see if they were behind me and they were gone. And then I turned back around and they were right in front of me. And I was like, this is terrifying. It was worse than any horror movie. I said, you know what? I love pretty things. I'm going to stay in the shallow end. This idea that I'm going to be so that was the last time I ever went scuba diving. I said, you know what? This is not for me. I'm going to stay above the water and I'll fish, but I'm not going down there where the other environment is not conducive to my chubbiness,
Yeah,
for any means.
my son, he's a master diver, and
Oh, yeah.
him and his girlfriend years ago, they were in. He told me the story. They were in Biscayne Bay,
Yeah.
and it was right after a kind of a stormy day, so the water was all murky, and
Mm,
they do night dives. He loves night diving, right? And he's down there, and the water's all murky, and it's dark out. There's right
mm.
moon. They do it when the moon's out, right?
Yeah.
It's still murky, and out of the murk comes these jaws. Like there was a giant grouper comes out of the murk. You could see it comes into view, he says, and it's like, and he's like, holy
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah. No thanks. Nope.
Yeah.
And
But
and
this is
those
the
big
guy who
those
during his university experience, him and his class, they took a trip to the Isle of Dominica, not the Dominican, but the Isle of Dominica, out in
hmm
the Caribbean,
Yeah.
and they mapped, first time ever. They spent a whole week there. They mapped the whole coral reef that it's never
Oh,
been mapped
wow.
before. And they
Wow.
measured it. They would take measurements, and
Sure.
they mapped the whole reef around the island.
Wow. Well, I mean, that tickles my cartographic sense, to be able to
That's
have
exactly
somebody
why I
that's like,
brought it up.
absolutely, and to have that's almost like one of those kind of adventure things. Everybody used to ask me always, isn't everything already mapped already? And I said, no, absolutely not. There's so much of the world we don't know about, especially underwater. I
Oh
mean, we
yeah,
know nothing about what's down there, really. It's
especially
a
the
whole
depths, the deep depths.
absolute. Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you sit on an airplane, right? And I like when I sit on an airplane, I always go with put the where the flight's going, and then I zoom in
Hmm.
on the Earth, and you start. I just do that for fun, and you just watch, and you see the different shelves and the different plates. You can see all of these
Oh,
trenches.
yeah.
We know they exist, but to get
And
down to some of these places,
oh,
like the Mariana Trench, I mean, what the hell's
no.
down there?
And by the time you get down there, whatever was there is going to be moved on. It's going to leave it's not going to sit there and hang out for you to be able to watch it with your little port window, you got on the little porthole that you got on there. That's about all you're going to see. Maybe as time goes on with drones and other things, they can put cameras on things and do more exploration. But the idea of me going down there with limited air supply,
So long
no
as you don't do
thanks.
another Titanic excursion,
Yeah. Oh, geez. No. I mean, that was a tragedy.
that was a hell
You
of a
know,
tragedy. Yeah.
absolutely. Mm.
So what's some other good tales you got to tell?
Oh, I tell a story. Somebody asked me once about what's one of the most memorable fishing trips. And, I can tell you that I went out, my dad, like I mentioned, when we ever would travel, he'd always have a rod and reel together. And one of the activities we liked to do was we would fly fish. And so fly fishing was something that for he and I, open cast, we would just use regular reels, lakes, streams, fishing all around here. But we would travel to go to places like the North Georgia mountains, North Carolina, Tennessee, and do some trout streams up there and be able to catch some trout fish. And my dad was an artist when it came to fly fishing. He really knew how to roll cast and move and taught me how to do those things. And it was you had to really kind of be in harmony with what you were doing to be able to make the rod do what it was supposed to do and put the presentation. Well, we took a family trip out west. And when we went out west, we were in Wyoming in the Snake River. And he had always wanted to go out there and catch a trout in the Snake River. It was one of those kind of legendary things. And so we went out, and I was more interested in going into the rocks, and I was swimming. It was in the middle of the summer, so the water was nice and cool. Water was clear. I would go down there and with my mask and snorkel, and I was getting all the lures and all the different things that people had snagged. I was sitting there collecting a full tackle box full of fishing tackle for free because nobody. And I was doing this. Well, I took a break and I sat on the rock and I was watching my dad cast. And to watch him just bring the rod back and forward and watch the line go out. I was lucky enough to capture where he actually had the line go out and it landed in an eddy and it came out and he was fishing with like a mayfly pattern. And when it came out and I could watch just that little hint of tuft of dry fly that was there, and a trout came up and just sucked it off the surface. Just
No, man.
and when I saw that, and then you saw the swirl and you saw my dad's rod go back and he set the hook and he fought that for almost 20 minutes to bring that fish in. And to watch him, how excited he was and just how amazing it was for him to land that fish. And it was a two-hander. He would say, to support this fish, it was so big. He was so proud and so excited about catching this fish. And we took pictures. There was no cell phone cameras back then. Took pictures, and then he let the fish go. And I was like, Dad, what are you doing, man? You caught this. That's the one you got to mount. And he says, No, that's a fish for someone else to catch and appreciate.
Yeah,
And
but if you
so
take a picture of it, you can have one created.
you can nowadays it's a lot easier to do, and he had a couple of mounted fish that he had that were not nearly trophy size, but they were north, because he grew up in Wisconsin. And so, growing up in Kenosha, and when you would go out the Mississippi River, he caught the white bass and the other fish that were running and stuff in there. So he had what he thought was a big fish at the time was like a little 3 or 4 pound bass, and he had another 3 or 4 pound rainbow trout that he had caught, and those were on the wall when I was growing up in my parents' house. And I never understood why he mount these little fish, but they were big fish in the environment where he was. And now, you come down to Florida and they got these 9, 10, 12 pound fish that are just bucket mouth, huge bass, kind of thing. So, it's all relative, but And it's something that you can go now with a photograph and have them make a blank, and then they can put it out there, and you can get it made. I need to see if I can dig up a picture of that brown trout. But it was a beautiful, beautiful fish.
So, with your dad being loving of fishing, did when you
Hmm.
were kids, did you ever buy in one of those big mouth, the bass thing
Oh, he
sings?
had
Did you get one of
multiples.
the?
Billy
Oh,
Bass, yes,
the Billy Bass.
yes, the Billy Bass. My dad thought that was the one of the greatest inventions ever. He had the first one was to take me to the river and throw me in the water, and it had the whole thing. It was a Christmas that we, of course, back as seen on TV. And then he had one later that you could actually put your own audio to, and so he thought it
Oh,
was great because you could push the button and you could say, and it would repeat whatever you said. That was the second version of the thing. So yeah, those they have a I had my fair share of the Billy Bass on the wall for sure.
do you have
Absolutely.
one of the ones you gave to him? Did
You
you
know what? I have
inherit
to.
it?
It's probably at my parents' house. I don't know. My mom's probably, unless my mom got rid of it. She's kind of purged a lot of the old junk.
Be
But it
right
would be
there on your
funny.
wall. It should be
Yeah, I
right
can put it. I
there
can
under
put it
that.
right here.
Yeah, that's
Exactly.
where it
Yeah.
needs to be,
Yes.
Billy
Absolutely.
Bass.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Did you did you ever make your own lures?
So not lures yet, but I did do a lot of tie flying with fly tying with my dad. So
Okay.
we tied. So dad was one of these guys that he would take, and when he would hunt. He would hunt a squirrel or a rabbit or whatever, he was hunting, or deer, whatever it is, and he would save the hide and save the hair, and then he would use it in making flies. And one of another story is that my older brother took him up to Red Lake up in Canada to do some fishing for walleye, northern pike, and lake trout. So that was a fly-in fishing experience that they got to go and do, and that was great. Dad loved that. Well, he took a bunch of these flies that he had put googly eyes on, like the plastic googly eyes, and these big patterns of this big, feathers and just crazy looking things. They looked like a fourth grader had made these things. But he made a bunch of flies. He probably tied 100 flies, and he brought them in his bag. I said, Dad, why don't you just, go get some tackle that he goes, no, no, no. This is going to catch fish. I'm going to tell you, catch fish. So he goes on this trip. And as he comes back and tells the story, they're out there on this where they have the locals that are the guides, and they put them in these boats, and then they do shore lunch in the middle of the day, and they go and they fish. They weren't catching anything. And my dad breaks out these goofy looking flies that he's tied, these streamers that he had tied. And he puts it on the rod and he throws it out and he lands a lake trout, monster lake trout. Throws it out again, catches another monster lake trout. And so the other boats around the area are all watching what's going on. And they're getting mad at their guide because they're not putting them on the fish. The guy's like, look, we're in the same water. We're 20 feet away, 30 feet away from each other. They go, what are you fishing with? He goes, I'm fishing with a little fly, whatever it is. So they end up, my dad hands them out to the people, to the guides and to the other boats or whatever it is at shore lunch. Because how are you getting all these fish, Lou? And he's, I'm just, using it, got to. And he wasn't being, overly, promotional of it, but he said, try this. And they went out and they were tearing them up all afternoon on these goofy flies. And so, you know what? It's not something that would be something I would have tried, but you know what? My dad had confidence in what he was doing, and it was something that was fun to be able to share with other folks. And they sat back, smoked cigars, and told stories about how these goofy looking flies. Well, when they left, they wanted to, they tipped the guys who were the guides, and the guide that was of my dad's crew. He says, I don't want any money, but I want some of those flies. Give me some of those goofy lures you made. So
Right?
yeah.
There you go. Um, what would be your best fish related movie you ever saw?
Oh, I have to say a river runs through it. When I sit there and I watch that, and I had an opportunity to be in Missoula a couple of times. I've got great memories in Missoula. Um, to see that open water and to watch the fly fishing that was captured on film, that is just beautiful country. And it is some of the most elegant. and peaceful things when you're in that, you're there, you're waiting, you're in the environment, you're in the water, you're there trying to convince a very smart fish to bite on something that is mimicking what is in the environment of that moment. You got to match the hatch, as they say. And when you watch that movie, and it was the effort that Brad Pitt's character would go out there and he would always catch something that was, and then of course the dad was the one that always had more. He never bragged. He was very humble about it. But that was very similar to my experience, where no matter what I would do, and I thought I caught something pretty special, and my dad always had that trump card or whatever it is, and his creel had a few extra fish in it, kind of thing. So that's my favorite. One of my favorite movies were fishing themed in there for sure.
What's your best fishing song?
Oh, fishing song. Huh. Music. I've never been asked that question before. I'd have to say, um, sea shanty or something else out there that uh, you know, I'm thinking. I mean, I'm thinking what fishing songs. Um, I don't know the answer to that. Can you give me, have you thought about
I don't
fishing
know.
songs in terms,
I don't know.
you
It
know,
just came
I
in my head as we were talking.
yeah.
Else did I
So
ask you
so
something
you know,
cool?
I that well that there's a song as part of. I'll give you this to answer the
Got to
question.
be a Jimmy Buffett song about.
Well, okay, so there's Jimmy Buffett songs for sure. You can always go that, but there's a song called The Ludlows, which is the theme song to it's a a strings song primarily, that is the theme song from A River Runs Through It. And that song is something, when I hear that, it kind of really connects with the fly fishing and component of it. So in that movie score, the Ludlows song that's in there really has a special place. When I hear that, it's something that just everything slows down.
Got to slow down, and at this point in your life, it brings back memories of your dad. I'm sure.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Did you ever
For
get
sure.
hooked? You ever get hooked?
Oh, myself, like, absolutely. As a kid, several times I get it in the ear, get it in the
Ooh.
hat or whatever it is, and I remember having so you learn real fast once you do it the first time, how to get out of that jam. And my dad would, very calmly just say, "It's okay, whatever. It's supposed to, it's doing the job." I got it caught in the ear one time, and it was in the cartilage, and so he had to push it through all the way in order to cut the barb off. And I was wailing as a kid. I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I remember getting caught with a treble hook in the ear. Well, just a few years ago, I'm out fishing behind my parents' house, and I got it right in the thumb,
Ouch.
and it went right into the pad of my thumb. And uh, my dad wasn't home, and I knew what I had to do. And I said, I need some angle cutters to be able to cut the barb off.
Mhm.
So I went to my parents' neighbor, and Mr. Cotton, he's sitting there, and he was out. He smoked cigarettes, and he was out there smoking a cigarette. I said, Mr. Cotton, I said, do you have a pair of angle cutters? And he says, yeah. I said, I need your help with something. And I showed him. He kind of almost fainted. He looked at it and he says, oh my gosh. I said, what? This is what we're going to do. I said, I'm going to push it through to the other side, and I need you to cut the barb off so I can slide it back out again. And he said, are you serious? And I said, yep, that's what we're going to do. And so calmly and collectively, I was able to push it through, and he cut it off. He says, man, you didn't even flinch. I said, I've been here before. And I said, you know what? Once you know the path to get out of this bad situation, it's awful easier than when you have to sit there and say, what am I going to do? And I said, I
Mhm.
have, so it's a life lesson, that no matter how experienced you are, if you're not paying attention, or if, you get bit by something, you need to work through it, so that happened. Absolutely.
You ever get bit by a fish?
Well, most of the I mean, in terms of the freshwater fish, their teeth, and they'll bite at you, they'll snap at you, trying to get it, get the lure out of their mouth or whatever when you're trying to take the hook out. I had a fish when I was actually fishing on the shore at off a beach. My dad liked to go down to Mexico Beach, and we would fish. And there was a fish, and those ocean fish, I don't know what species of fish it was, but it was an angry saltwater fish that we had caught in the surf. And when I went to take it off, it had razor sharp teeth, and I've got a scar on my thumb that's, to this day, if you could see that, probably not, but it ripped right through my, yeah. So bit by a fish? Absolutely. You know what I did? I went immediately to Walmart and I bought a pair of pliers that were long needle nose pliers. And I keep a glove and a rag in my tackle box that if I'm ever going to have to go near a fish like that, because the spines on their back, and everything else on their fins, or catfish and everything else, I go and I take the pliers. I'm not putting my hand anywhere near a fish's mouth. I don't care how docile the thing seems to be. It's going to flinch and get you. So absolutely been bit by a fish.
Catfish, man, are nasty.
Yeah. I like to eat them. I don't like to catch them. I'll let
They're,
somebody else make that
that's a
work. No
nasty
thanks.
fish, man. I've
Yeah.
caught a catfish, man, and they're spiny and things like
Mm-mm.
just horrible. And
No
I remember
thanks.
I was fishing off. I have a dock on the river here,
Oh
right
yeah.
outside my neighborhood, and that's where
Hmm.
I haven't gone fishing in a while. But I bought this rod years ago when my grandson was young, and I bought one for me and one for him, and we went
Yeah.
fishing on the dock. So we're fishing, and we latched on to a couple of things, and nothing major. But I ended up pulling up a stingray,
Oh wow.
a little one, a little
Yeah,
ray,
still.
you know.
Yeah.
But man, you get that tail's whipping around, and you just like, it's
Yeah.
like you got to get it onto the dock. You got
Yep.
to get this thing out of it. I
Yeah.
didn't want to like just cut the line,
No, you don't. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
but you had to
But
get down. The tail's whipping around. You got to figure out how. The two of us, I said, okay, you're gonna do this. I don't want him to get hurt, and I'm
yeah.
gonna figure a way to keep this tail from whipping into you. But those are fun to unhappily hook.
Oh yes. Yes. It's like getting a turtle.
Hmm.
So I get a turtle, and then the thing swallows your bait or whatever it is, and you want to get it out of there, but they got this long neck that comes in and out, and they're fighting you, and they've got little claws on their little web feet, and it's like don't want to get a turtle. It's anything, whatever you want to do. Stingrays, scorpion of the sea, and turtles are just angry little things, and don't want to have to mess with that at all.
Yeah.
So those are two things to stay away from, especially because the ray's mouth is on the bottom, so you got to figure out a way to keep it. You're going to put it on its back, or what are you going to do? And that tail's whipping around, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a stingray or a regular ray, but if there's a stinger on the end of that thing, nobody wants to feel that pain.
No.
That's nobody wants to feel that
No.
pain.
And you get those, I know, over and on the beach, they get it
Hmm.
the sand,
Oh yeah, shuffle your
showering.
feet. Yeah, I got too many. I got less years ahead of me than I do behind me, and I'm like, I don't need to go walking in the surf. I'm not a beach guy.
No.
My body type's not conducive. It's got too much surface area for the sun and sand, and I'm like, you know what? I don't mind. My family likes going to the beach. Let them go to the beach. I stand back and I smoke cigars,
That's what I
and that's
do.
what I do. Yeah, I'm like, I'll stay in the shade. I'll sit on the porch, whatever, or the patio or the balcony or whatever it is, or I'll go to the cigar shop while they go to the beach for the day. That's fine. But shuffling in the water, and you got to make sure because the rays are over there. No thanks.
Yeah, my wife's got a simple philosophy when it comes to water. She does not go into if she cannot see the bottom of the water, okay, she ain't going in it. So she's only going in a pool,
Yeah,
right? She says, you go in there, it's a jungle,
yeah,
and they eat things. They bite
yes,
you. Like, I have friends that are surfers here on the east coast of Florida, and they're out there surfing. I was just talking to a friend of mine the other night. He's a surfer, and he goes, "Yeah, he's out there all the time. Does he ever get bit by a shark?" He goes, "No, but it's pretty frightening when you see the pictures of aerials
yes,
looking down at the surf.
yes,
They're out there surfing, and there's like schools of shark.
absolutely.
They're usually like Nerf sharks and stuff like that, but still, they're freaking sharks. They
Nope,
bite."
nope, nope,
She goes,
nope.
"I ain't going in the water. I ain't
No,
going near
thank
the
you.
water."
I'm with her. I'm part of her philosophy. I'm with that. I subscribe to that same. No thanks.
And even
And
when
you,
you're out there, do you go? You gone in swamps?
no, I'm trying to stay out of the swamps too. But there's people that go down there. Like I got a friend, that lives down in down there by Lake Okeechobee, and you can go out there and get some amazing things and experience nature, and and I'm an Eagle Scout. I did my fair share of camping and
Yeah.
everything else. And so I love going in the outdoors. But there's a certain element when you realize you are not designed for that space. And the swamp, you can't move fast enough to get away from the creatures that are able to go through and navigate that space. And
I,
hell, they got those anacondas and boa constrictors
oh,
and things
down
that are
there? Oh,
down there. I mean, it's like they'll pull you under and they're all over the place.
yeah, yeah.
Gators,
We were
no.
two stories we gave. So I took a trip once. We were up in New Orleans, and we did a vacation up there. We went on a swamp tour. Okay, and
Okay,
they took us out into the swamp. And I
sure.
will say this: going into the swamp is the most tranquil moment because
Mhm.
it's got all that green laying on the water, right? And you got the boat just casually going through, and you see the gators, and the guys like tossing stuff to gators, and bringing them over to the boat. But you got snake, you got moccasin, moccasins, they scared the daylights out of me because I
And
know I had a friend of mine that was fishing and a freaking moccasin jumped in the boat.
oh yeah,
And they're nasty, nasty snakes, man.
oh yeah.
They'll
They're
attack you for no
they're
reason.
always angry. Those snakes are always angry and they're
Angry
aggressive.
snake.
They'll swim at you and they'll jump in the boat and they'll just say, "You don't belong here."
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
water
So
moccasins.
we're
No,
doing
thank you.
this, and there's a snake that goes across. You see the line through the green water, and you see the gator. But other than that, it's just this tranquil thing. And
Hmm.
as we're doing this, he's pointing out, we're getting deeper into the swamp, and he points over to this one tree in the swamp, and there's a freaking tree house. I mean, the swamp people, they live there. There are people that
Oh.
live in the swamp in New Orleans. Okay. When you see these shows, that's real. They
Hmm.
actually live in the swamp and they live off everything that's in the swamp and they're very trained. They know what they're doing. Generations.
That's different. That's like
Right?
that's like saying to somebody who's worked in tobacco for their whole life, roll me a cigar. I trust that. I would trust the person that lives and grew up in the bayou and grew up in the swamp.
Right.
I would trust that. Me going out there recreationally in a kayak or 4 inches out of the water and deciding to go there, no thanks. I don't have the life experience or the it's that situational awareness that you have in a swamp where you can kind of hear and see and you know what to expect and you don't panic when you have something that surprises you,
Yep.
no thanks,
Now, we
you
were in
know.
the scouts, my son and I. I was the
Hmm.
scout leader. He was, and we went on a 30-mile hike through the Ocala forest.
Oh yeah,
And it was a 3-day hike. So about every 10 miles you hit a spring. So you hike for 10 and then you set up camp and then you just swim in the springs, you enjoy it,
sure.
you have dinner, you just lay down, you wake up, break camp and go again. So one of these days, the second day I think it was, we were going through the Ocala forest and there's swampy areas and the water across the trail was about 8 to 10 inches deep for a period of time and you're walking across and it's early in the morning, right? The sun had just rose, so the heat's coming in, all right? And over on the side, I catch out of my peripheral vision over on the other side of the shore of this swampy area is this big flat rock. And there had to be a 20-25 foot bull gator just sunning itself in the morning sun. And we have 30 scouts.
Yes.
And I'm looking at my other scout leaders. And I said, move these children fast. Get them past here because I'm watching this gator and the gator does one of these.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and
How hungry am I? Do I want to exert enough energy to go over there and grab one of those little scouts and a little
yeah,
backpack,
yeah,
have a little
it was.
snack?
And then the worst part is once you get past that moment, then we get into this area where there is a bunch of overgrowth on the trail, and the on the side of the trail is just really thick thicket, right? I mean, just you're not going in that area, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And as the first group goes past this one tree and this brush, all of a sudden, all of these bees come out, just like it was like a fog of
Oh my gosh.
bees. And the first group gets through, everybody backs up. And I'm like, there's no way to get to there because you can't go this way and you can't go that way. You got to go straight through.
Holy cow.
And we all look at each other and go, okay, boys, take out your ponchos. Okay. Put your ponchos over you, right? Okay. You got long sleeve shirts. I hope you brought those, right? Put those on. And when we say go, you go and run as fast as you can to the other side, right? And nobody got stung.
Oh wow.
We were
That
able
was
to
a
get
great
through
way
it.
to get through that. Absolutely. Holy moly.
But man, I just was like, because you're gonna get stung in the neck or whatever, you
Oh
gotta
yeah.
put some plastic
Absolutely.
over you. Tarp,
Yeah.
if you have a tarp, a tent tarp, put it over you and just run. Just get through. And these things you could
Wow.
see them, they just came, it was a fog.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We're not
Oh my
happy
God.
we were in their environment.
No, that's the thing. You're not you are the foreign object. You as arrogant as you want to say, top of the food chain and all that kind of stuff. You are in their element.
That's
Whether it
right.
be in deep ocean water, you're in the woods, you're in the swamp. I respect nature for what it's worth, and we're just merely tourists when it comes to those kinds of things for sure. Wow, wow, but
So what
great
do you
story.
do? So what do you do for a living besides cigar?
So so cigars is basically something that has grown out of my hobby and in my doing daily kind of release from things. I was a cartographer for a number of years.
Right.
Out of school, got a degree in geography, and then I got into the development business. The person I work for now, it's a family-owned business that is for assisted living and memory care development for seniors housing.
Okay.
And so that has been something that I have learned a lot about business by way of being close to the owners of the business. And we have they had a business for 18 years. They sold that, and then we've been developing, and we're now have a facility in Dothan, Alabama, called Grand South Senior Living. And so that facility is now at what they call stabilization. It's full. We've got a full complement. It's a luxury senior housing property where people are living their best life in the last few years of their life. And we are giving them an opportunity to have camaraderie, and the food program and everything else that we have is top notch. And so it's real exciting to be able to see and experience that. Um, so that's what I do for a day job. And as we, developing, we're going to, do more of that type of stuff. This is something that I can share with cigars and be able to travel and go out and do different things and whatnot. So it's very complimentary.
It's gotta be very rewarding to do that.
It is, and you know what? It was something that I was raised in a family where we took care of our old people. There was no such thing as assisted living or old folks' home was a place that you put people when you didn't want to take care of them.
Yeah.
And it's a lot different in the modern era of what we have now. It's like a cruise ship on land. I mean, I would live there, and I did while we were doing development. I had an apartment there where I lived and was there on a daily basis. It was great. The food's fantastic. The activity programs, we got an exercise room, we got all the stuff, that they get to see and do. Well, when I was a kid, my dad's parents, they were older and they lived into their 90s. And so we ended up taking care of them. So I grew up, taking care of old folks. And it was a matter of learning how and they say once a man, twice a child, right? So you have I didn't know what it was like to take care of kids until I had my own children, but I also saw at the end of life my parents taking care of their parents.
Right.
And so it was something we did, and you just took care of them. And my dad had a sister who lived with his parents, but they lived here in town once they moved up from Port Richey. And when they moved here, we would go over there and take care of them, and that was what you did. And so it was a natural thing for me to see how I can, adopt everybody else's grandparents in terms of being able to see and listen to their stories and spend time with them and do those kinds of things. So it's been very rewarding to be able to see how much you can make their life better
Right.
by and looking at ways to fine tune. And we just had our Thanksgiving dinner on Friday over there in Dothan, and you know great food. And to see the families come in and to see the families know that their loved ones are taken care of is very rewarding to be able to know that. So
Absolutely.
absolutely.
That's good. Well, we've gone into our hour and a half. Um, Tall tales and tales.
Yes.
I promised we had them. We talk
Yeah.
fishing, we talk
Yep.
tales, we talk Lure
Yep.
Cigars. Don't forget to go to lurecigars.com. Check
Hmm.
out what Lou has offering. Um, before we close the show, I just ask you, how many shops are you in now?
We're in about 15 shops right now,
Okay.
and we have great retail partners. You can see our entire list that we have on our website. If you go to lurecigars.com and go to the contact us page, you can see the retailers that we have. I've got a couple of people out there that are representing the brand that are spreading the word. We're looking for new retailers that we have. So if you don't have Lure Cigars at your shop, please let them know. Have them reach out to us. We'd love to be able to experience cigars with other people and share the love of tackle and tobacco. But we are very, very thankful for all the retail partners that have supported us in getting going. We'll be at PCA this next year, so look for us if you're a retailer that's looking for our brand and to try something new and see what it's like to smoke great cigars and tell tall tales. Come by at PCA. We'd love to meet you. And I really appreciate it, Jimmie. I appreciate your time. I could sit here and talk to you all night long and smoke cigars. It's been a pleasure. I hope we can do it again soon.
I would say if you want to look at another brand new shop that just opened up here in Cocoa Village, Florida.
Okay.
It's a place called His and Hers Cigar Lounge. They were
Oh,
tuning. I don't know if they're still watching, but they tuned in.
yeah.
I saw them pop up.
Great.
Fantastic couple. They're just building out their humidor now, so they, any
Wonderful.
kind of nice new brands, something with a good story. I think we
Yeah.
have it. Um, what what would a Lore Cigars shop event be like?
Well, we've had a couple of great events. The one what I like to do is I like to go there because basically it's easier to tell the story in person. What we'll do is we set up shop and sometimes they could do a fish fry or we'll sit there and we have an opportunity to sit around, smoke some great cigars and tell tall tales. But I would love to come and meet the people that are the locals that like to smoke some cigars. We'll share a variety of our cigars that we have, and as we sit down and smoke cigars, we give away a lot of tackle and tobacco. We you know
Tobacco and
we
tobacco. I like
so
it.
that's kind of our moniker that we have. We do a lot of stickers that people put on their coolers or their tackle boxes and things. So in my graphic design in me, I love to be able to express the art side of things and use that same kind of motif that we had from the 60s and 70s. Wooden lures. You can see some of my dad's old lures that we have
Oh
up
yeah.
here on the wall. Um, I like to be able to share that kind of aesthetic tackle boxes. We do custom trays for each of our retail partners that bring in the core line that look like an old fishing tackle box that you'd see at a bait shop, and then they can put the individual cigars in the packs of cigars. So our packaging, real quick, we do 10 packs of cigars is how we do it. Craft paper packaging and with wax inside to seal the boveda in. So our Corojo is red, our Habano is green, and we've got a new cigar coming out this week. It's called the Jolly Walleye. And the Jolly Walleye is a cigar that is for our holiday LE that we have. That's not on our website. We'll be updating it this week. It's in a silver package. This is a Habano special salted caramel. I'll send you a couple so you get a chance to smoke them. This is my favorite blend of the whole line so far. It's something that I smoke one and I want to smoke one right after it.
I candy. Just do it,
It's
man.
just that good, and it's just something that we've enjoyed, and I've shared it with other enthusiasts. But I'll make sure you get a chance to smoke a couple of them. That's the Jolly Walleye. My dad's favorite fish to eat was a walleye pike on Fish Fridays up in the Midwest where they do fish fries. So when it,
Fish Fridays. I remember
yep.
those days.
Oh yeah,
And
oh
when
yeah,
I was a
Lenten
kid,
Fridays.
I hated fish.
Sure,
I
sure.
could because my father loved flounder.
Oh yeah, good
And
fish though.
flounder is a real fishy fish.
Yeah, it can be. Yep, yep,
I just couldn't stomach fish.
yep.
Tuna fish, yeah, tuna fish sandwiches, okay. But
Sure, sure.
when it came to Friday, because every Friday, Catholic
Yep,
household, you're you're
yep.
you're you're eating fish.
Yeah,
I would be
that's
like,
what we got. Absolutely.
I'd say no. You get me pizza.
Right. Cheese
No
pizza.
pepperoni, no
Nope.
sausage, just cheese
Nope.
pizza.
Nope.
I am
Cheese
not
pizza.
eating fish.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And I'll never forget being on a plane on a business trip. and I got upgraded for the first time in my life to first class on this
Oh
trip.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'm sitting in this first class. I'm in the last row of first class, and I'm like, yeah, this is good. Have a few drinks, you know. And they come down with this is back when they had real food,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And they
Sure.
come down and they got, they have the menu they give to you, right? So I'm looking at the menu
Yep.
and they got like, they have beef tips, man. I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. So
Sounds good.
they get to me and I go and I said, I'll have the beef tips. They said, we're all out of beef tips, sir. The only thing we got left is filet of sole.
Oh.
And I'm like, really? Oh my God. So I look at him and I say, I'm hungry now because I didn't eat anything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, give me the filet of sole. I figure if I don't eat this fish, there's other things on it, the potatoes.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
well, I ate the filet of sole and it was done right because my mother was not a good cook. Okay. So we'll just leave it at that. So I ate this filet of sole. I'm like, oh wow, this is pretty tasty. This is good.
Hmm.
Right? So I get home and I told my wife, I said, we're gonna go get some fish for dinner. She looked at me like I had five heads. She goes, well, you hate fish. I said, nah, nah, nah. I told her, I said, we get some fish, we get some sole, we make it up. From that point on, I went bananas with fish. I started getting, I can eat salmon all day. I can
Yeah. Yeah.
I eat sushi, man. I'm like, I eat
Yes.
raw fish now.
Yes.
I've eaten
Sure.
sea urchin, right?
Yes.
I mean, I've
Yeah.
had everything under the sun I'd eel. I love eel.
Yeah.
These things
Unagi.
when I was a kid, I'd be like, are you crazy? And now I'm
Yeah.
like, I'd rather have fish all day long, right?
Oh,
Than have
it's so
any
great
meat.
for you. Absolutely. I'm with you. But it's just like if you or I would go down and roll a cigar, nobody would want to smoke it. But if you have a cigar that is rolled by someone who is an expert in it, or you go to a chef, if the food is prepared right and they know how to prepare seafood, I'd much rather let somebody else cook the fish. I'm not very successful cooking fish at home because I didn't have a lot of family members that liked fish. But my kids are now getting to the point where they will actually appreciate it. They'll order it when we. So fish was always something that I ordered when we would go out to a restaurant.
Right.
My dad knew how to fry fish and he would, he was good at it. But as far as like baked fish or something sautéed or whatever, or broiled, I leave that up to the experts. I go to a restaurant where the chef knows how to make it and don't overcook it and don't undercook it because fish
Yep.
is one of those things. But I do like sushi also. I'll go out and have
Dude,
sushi as well.
sushi all
Yeah.
day long. I lived in Japan for a year, and let me tell you what,
Oh, really?
I ate more sushi than you could imagine.
I bet it was phenomenal. I bet it was
I
when you get it at the source. I mean, come on.
they knew what the only thing I didn't eat over there was the blowfish. I didn't have
Oh,
the opportunity to get to the house, one of the houses that are licensed to do that. I always wanted to,
sure,
right?
sure.
But, because
Yeah,
because
leave
I
that to
always
the
caught,
experts. That's too much risk. They say
yeah, because I always caught those. And my uncle, my great uncle, he had a boat, off in the Bronx, and we would go up
Hmm.
go fishing under the Throgs Neck Bridge, and I
Yeah,
I always hooked a blowfish.
sure. They're fun. They're fun to look at, though, right? But
Yeah, they are
you
fun,
know,
but
yeah,
just
yeah,
get rid of the damn fish.
yeah. Sure.
Can't eat
Yep.
that, Jim. I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
Not good.
wait
Not good eating.
a
Not
minute.
good eating is what they say. Not good eating. That's
Anyway, I'm
phenomenal.
gonna give you probably already did it, but I'll do it again. I'm gonna give you the last word.
Oh, well, I really appreciate all of your support in promoting the brand over the last year. I really appreciate all the work you do for the industry. And Jimmie, I just want to, encourage people to take time to smoke great cigars and tell tall tales. And that is the thing, though, whether you smoke a Lure or you smoke another brand that's your favorite, take time, share that time with as many friends and family as you can, because we don't get that non-renewable resource of time. So take the time and share your stories. People like to hear a good story, and they like to be able to take and tell their story as well. Take time to listen. And so I encourage you to use cigars as a catalyst to make that happen.
Fantastic. Okay, that's our show, folks. I want to thank everybody for watching tonight, those that are watching tonight and throughout the week. And remember, this show will be up on the YouTube channel next week forever. So you can always go rewatch it, or if you haven't seen it, well, point somebody to it. Um, No show next week. I don't think so. It's Thanksgiving, so I'm
Yeah.
going to be in DC having fun with my stepkids, and we're going to have a good time up there. Might hit a shop or so when I'm there, but probably not next week. And then after that, we got a lot of cool stuff coming up to the end of the year. So we got cigars of the year coming up. So you don't know how that all goes. I want to thank everybody for watching and thank all the sponsors for sponsoring the show. Without them, the show is always a little harder to do. So with that, we're going to call it a wrap. You all have a nice night, and we'll catch you on the flip side.